Well, welcome everybody. We're here for another episode of the Marion Homeschool Assistance Program Student Council Mental Health Podcast. So that's 10 of our minutes are already gone, just saying. Got 3 students from the Marion Homeschool Assistance Program Student Council again. My name is Jim Ott. Our engineer today is Olivia Coates. We introduced the engineer. That's always a good thing. And happy to just be discussing some things. We just talked for about 10 or 15 minutes about various topics related to mental health that pretty much any high school student's going to be dealing with. We have a kind of a broad topic today. We're not sure where it's going to go, but before we get started, I'm going to let the students introduce themselves and we'll get going.
Hi, I'm Jenna. I'm a senior here at MHSAP.
I'm Gracelyn, and I'm a sophomore.
I'm Gigi, and I'm also a senior.
Good stuff. So sophomore, 2 seniors, and a super senior. Okay, here we go. Today, our topic for today, and it's really broad, so we don't really know what we're going to do with it, but it's the topic of stress. And, I mean, our entire culture is full of stress, and life is full of stress, and being in high school is full of stress, and so we can go in a lot of different directions. But I'll toss it to you guys. If I say this, okay, on the subject of stress, as a high school student in these years that you're going through, what are the things that come to mind for you? What are some of the stressors you're experiencing? What are some of the things you do to manage your own stress? What are helpful for that? So any of that stuff. It's open-ended today.
I think schoolwork can definitely be a stressor. I think family can definitely, depending on what your situation there is, that can be a stressor.
Mm.
Yeah, I think there are so many things that go into, like, you're being stressed, and I think that there is an importance to say that I would even argue that there is a healthy amount of stress that will motivate you to get stuff done. Mm-hmm. And I think balancing that is really hard, but there are so many different stresses, whether it's like family, whether it's self-induced stress or outside-induced stress. So like deadlines, things that maybe you signed up for that you actually enjoy, like activities, sports, whatever, that once you're like trying to do those things become stressful in conjunction with everything else you're doing.
Can you just like tell me what you mean by self-induced stress?
So like something that you're imposing on yourself, like, oh, I think that this is like a great question. Like, how do I...
Procrastinating.
Yeah.
That's your
procrastinating fault. Would be, yeah, anything that's like your fault.
Yeah.
I would almost argue like if you signed up, even like if you signed up for like a sport or something like that is kind of more of a self-induced, while that's still coming from an outside source, that is something that you like, that is not mandatory that you put on.
Mm-hmm.
But if you really love the sport,
it could still be stressful.
Of course.
Yeah.
But is that in the same category as, say, procrastination? Which, I mean, it sounds like a character flaw, and that's not the point. But like, procrastination is like, oh, all of a sudden I've got 10 things to do. I had a week to do them. I could have 2 today instead of 10. Yeah. That's on me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But like signing up for something that you love to do, is that in the same category?
I would say it's not exactly the same category,
mm-hmm.
but they're still both like ideas of self-induced stress.
Okay.
So they're still like very different categories. Yes.
Okay. All right. So I'm sorry, Gigi, you haven't had a chance to talk. What do you want to say about stress? Because like I want to follow that up a little bit. But
this might be a hot take, but I'm an introvert, and sometimes people can be stressful. Like, I love my friends. I love the people I spend time with, but I do know that when I'm volunteering for middle school mock trial or I'm doing the play, there's just so many outside sources and so much is going on that I get very stressed out by just a lot of people. Like, it's not like anything they're specifically doing. It's just there's so much going on and I can't really do my own thing. I get kind of stressed out.
Okay. That's so good. Now I've got 2 things I want to pursue, okay? Self-induced stress are things that, almost by definition, because you did them, you also have some choice in them. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So what are some examples of self-induced stress that's not so much about a choice to join something or not join something, but about a mindset of, like, do people put stress on themselves by the way they deal with their life?
Absolutely.
What would be examples of that?
I think for me, something that has really helped me with managing stress is picking my battles.
Yep.
Like, I get stressed out a lot by my family. So when I pick my battles and say, okay, my siblings are being really annoying right now, but I'm just going to walk away. And that will, help me to, that's a choice that I can make to lower the stress in my life. And like, for example, I'm actually wearing a bracelet today that says, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I love that quote because it kind of has to do with picking your battles.
That's so good. So if I ask you in a long-term sense, there was a time when you didn't know to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And so your reaction to what was happening, say, in your family, was actually creating more stress for you.
Mm-hmm.
But once you became aware, you could make choices to reduce your stress. Am I hearing that right?
Absolutely.
That's so good. What else? What are some other examples of things that people might do that by their whole own attitude is actually creating the very thing they're trying to avoid?
I think like people pleasing. I think it can become like a chore to be around people, to whether like you're introverted and you're just trying to keep up the energy of being around people, whether you're an extrovert and you want to make sure you're keeping up a face, or even an introvert can do that. I'm not saying that's exclusive to extroverts, but you're putting, a lot of people will show a certain side of them they want everyone to see. And so when you're constantly trying to make sure people only see a certain part of you, that can become a self-induced stressor, because every time you hang out with a certain group of people or these people, I got to make sure they see this, and I don't want them to see the real me because they might be like, think that's weird or whatever.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Wow. That's, wow. Go, yeah.
Mindset.
So much.
Not everybody's an optimist, but, and I'm not either. I force myself to be an optimist because I know that if I'm going to be pessimistic about life, I'm not going to get anything done, and then I'm going to get even more stressed out. And so I kind of have to force myself to look at a situation from all perspectives. I can look at it from the negative perspectives, from the realistic perspectives, or the positive. And if I go into something with a positive attitude, I'm more likely to succeed than when I go into it with a negative attitude. For us mock trialers, Mrs. Miller's always constantly talking about how your attitude really affects how well you do in every aspect of your life. And I have to force myself to be an optimist sometimes. So I am not stressing myself out so much by just me overthinking. I'm just overthinking. And so I have to force myself to be an optimist because my thoughts are deciding to be negative.
Wow. That's good. Anything else on like self-induced stress that pops into mind? One of the things that I've observed in recent years, I don't know that COVID made this worse, but I think it contributed to it, is that the stress of dealing with all the people and input. And when COVID came, all of a sudden everybody could hide. And then coming back into the world over the past, while you guys have been in high school essentially, a lot of people have had trouble coming back. And that they're getting overwhelmed by all of the input of social interactions, activities, school, and what you were talking about, that the difference between what I feel on the inside and what I'm showing on the outside. Now, I think everybody does that to some extent, right? I mean, none of us are, like, if we were completely open about everything, it would be either the best thing that ever happened in the world and we'd all be honest, or it would be just an absolute circus. But when there's a big gap between who you're pretending to be and who you're really feeling that you are, how much do you think that's playing into high school students' lives?
Every single one of their lives. I don't think anybody in high school really gets away from hiding parts of yourself or having an inauthentic version of yourself. I think even if it's just for a period of time, I think every single high schooler goes through that. And it's a phase that maybe not phase, maybe it's something that'll last a little bit longer, maybe it's something you have to kind of work through, battle through. But I think everybody at least has dealt with that in one point in their life. And I think high school and middle school are big, big times when that happens, because we're going through these stages of our life where we want to feel like we belong. We want to feel like we're connected and we can have a group of people that we fit in with. And so we force ourselves to fit the mold of a certain group or activity. And it's the only way I was able to really get out of that was to really realize that if people don't like me for who I am, then it's not really my problem. Like, obviously, don't be mean. Don't just be, a terrible person. But if people don't like, your little quirks, or maybe you're a little bit too loud, maybe you're a little bit too quiet. If people don't like that, then they don't have to be your friends. You don't have to be friends with everybody. You can pick your friends and decide who you want to be friends with. And that way they'll love you for who you really are.
So, okay, to respond to what you're saying, Gigi, that I think that what I'm hearing you say, and you guys respond to this, is that one of the things in order to manage that gap between, this is who I don't want anybody to see, the darker parts inside of us, the thoughts that I wouldn't want to share with anybody, the things I struggle with. What would these people that I'm seeking the approval of or wanting to be a part of, what would they think if they saw that? Mm-hmm. And it sounds like what I'm hearing you say is you have to become aware of that first. Yep. You have to become aware that that's what you're doing. Yep. And then you have to find the people that you can show little bits of your real self to and find out. And if they don't receive it well, it actually, and I didn't hear this, but tell me if this is the right way to say it, that's not a judgment of them. That's just an acknowledgement of difference. Yep. But if you perceive it as, oh, if you don't like me because of this, then I'm a bad person or you're a bad person, that can increase the stress. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Thoughts about that?
I think to add on to that, for me, something I had to learn, like Gigi was saying, is I can't be friends with everybody, and I don't have to be friends with everybody. And just because I'm not friends with someone does not mean they're a bad person or I'm a bad person, or that there's something wrong with either of us. Because sometimes, one person could be just, they have a completely different personality than the other person, and neither personality is wrong, but they just don't fit well together as a relationship and a friendship.
Yeah. Yeah, this is so good.
I think, off of that, as we change, as we get older, so are the people around us, for good and for bad. And so, just because you are really close friends with someone in elementary school doesn't mean you're going to be really close friends with someone in high school. Mm-hmm. And vice versa. You might have been, enemies with someone in middle school, and now you're really good friends in high school. I have friendships like that. And
me and Jenna are one of those.
Yeah.
There's one in this room, but we did put Gracelyn between you just in case a fight broke out. We didn't want there to be a problem here. Yes, that's right. Yeah. That's really good. Yeah, this we started with a big topic, stress. Mm-hmm. We ended up with social stress, which is very dominant. And becomes worse when you compound it with all of the responsibility stress. I got work to do, I got a job, I got so many different things to do. Mm-hmm. And so then the social stress, it becomes harder to manage, so to speak, because you don't have as much energy to do it. But the self-awareness of it becomes what's important. One of the things that stress will do a couple different things depending on who you are, but one of the things that stress will tend to do, when it becomes overwhelming, we tend to isolate. Mm-hmm. We tend to withdraw into ourselves further, which ends up, initially that feels like I'm just going to hide and I don't have to deal with it. But long term, and when I say long term, like a week or a month, in long term, it actually creates more stress because our brains are not wired for isolation. Introverts need time alone. Mm-hmm. But they don't want to be completely disconnected. We're not healthy when we're not engaged. But stress will drive you into yourself and isolate you from other people, which will then feed the story of there's something wrong with me. And if anybody ever knew. and I can't ever tell them because. And then, so therefore I have to isolate and become, like it can increase the gap. And so maybe one of the things we bumped into is to deal with that stress today, is to find ways to open up about some of the things that are inside that you're processing socially. Yeah. To have close friends, parents, trusted adults, whoever it is. Does that sound right? Like what are some of the things you guys do to process the? Let's have a therapy session right now. What are your darkest thoughts about yourself that you've never told any? No, who are some people or what are some strategies you have for dealing with some of that?
I would say get a trusted adult.
Yep.
That could be your parents. That might not be your parents. Yeah. I think parents are they're great people to have in your life, but I think sometimes it is good to have someone else. I know I have someone, I don't know where everyone else is, but I have someone at my church that I meet with regularly, and we try to meet at least once a month, and we talk, and I have some good friends, and we try and meet, and I think having those people that you know are going to be pointing you in a good direction are those are the people you want to make sure you're having. I'm pretty sure most of the people, most of the adults in your life, if you were to ask them, hey, can you keep me accountable on this, or hey, can I talk with you, they're probably going to be really honored that you would ask them to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Take that step, because I'm sure adults are just as scared as students are to reach out to do that.
I think there's absolutely so much power in vulnerability when you are able to share with someone who you trust, not just anyone, but someone who you trust, then, speaking things that have been on your mind and on your heart, saying this has been bothering me, I struggle with this, I think about this all the time, I can't stop this, all of these things, then, that is the first step in making the bad things go away, is acknowledging them.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's good.
I have very close relationships with my older sisters. They're all adults, and if I go over there to babysit their kids and hang out with them, I still am able to have really, really great conversations with them. I am able to really tell them anything about my life. I'm allowed to be very vulnerable with them, and they're allowed to be very vulnerable with me. And it's it's a double-sided relationship. And we both really get a lot out of it. We both really love each other, and we want the best for each other. And in the end, we end up taking our problems, not just to each other, but to God. We take our problems to Christ together. We have, moments of iron sharpening iron, bringing up Bible verses and just helping each other through that really difficult time or thing that's going on in your life.
Yeah, it's good. We're to the end of our time, and so I'm going to close up with something that will probably introduce a whole different thing. Suffering is a part of life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Don't
absolutely
suffer alone.
Yeah.
Because when you suffer alone, the suffering increases. Find people that you trust. So that we can kind of end with that, if that's okay. You guys, great. Thank you so much for sharing. And like I said, we started with the topic of stress, and we ended up with suffering. So it didn't get better. It just got worse. But I hope this has been useful to you. We're the Marian Homeschool Assistance Program Student Council Mental Health Podcast with our engineer, Olivia Coates. Well, just glance over. So grateful to you guys, and we'll see you on the next episode.